Hey, yeah, the 1960s, happy times, heavy times.
The year was 67 or 68. I worked at Terry Toons as an animation director where I created the Mighty Heroes personally and worked for the CBS television show of five stupid superheroes. And spent about 10 to 15 years at Terry Toons directing and writing and animating. Then I left Terry Toons to run Paramount Pictures cartoon studios at a very young age. Because somehow, though I loved Terry Toons very much and all the guys there were great, the animators, and I grew up there was something wrong with animation. So I took the job at Paramount running their whole cartoon studios because I thought if I could create everything, maybe something will happen. So I created 5 or 6 animated shorts, and they were never released per se, and they shut the studio down. In fact, they hired me to shut the studio down. So then I ran into this guy called Steve Krantz, who was in trouble with he was a producer, businessman, who had sold an animated series that was being done on television, but being produced in Canada, and it was falling apart. So he asked me if I can go to Canada and straighten it out. It was called Rocket Robin Hood. So needing a job and wanting to get out of New York, which is always fun during the Vietnam War days, I went to Canada, I did Rocket Robin Hood, and the Canadian operation fell apart eventually between Steve and this guy. They just started, each claimed they weren't paying each other. It was one of those typical lawsuit messes. And I came back to New York, finished the series under Bakshi Productions, which was Spider-Man after that for Steve Krantz. It was the #1 show on television. I did that for a year and a half for Steve. We were partners, more or less, or I thought we were partners. And then the underground cartoon explosion had already happened. I was still bored with animation. I was wrestling with this stuff. Why is it I'm not happy? And certainly the underground cartoon explosion showed me the way that animation, like everything else, has got to grow up. In other words, what the guys were doing in those days, which was just the start of it. When I did Fritz the Cat, Crumb wasn't a household name. I just liked Fritz the Cat and loved Crumb as a cartoonist. I had known about Crumb kind of. I found the Fritz the Cat book and told Steve I want to make a movie of this, Steve Krantz. And he thought it was a very good idea. And he did some calls. The next week he sends me out to San Francisco to meet Robert Crumb. He had talked to his wife, Dana, and I met Robert. And Robert, who I love very much and still do, was very young in those days and wasn't sure he wanted to do it. I spent 2 days with him, telling him how I would do it and why it would be fun and how important it would be for animation. And Krantz was willing to give, I think, Robert in those days 50 or 60 grand for the rights, which in those days were not bad. And Robert didn't want to do it and wasn't sure, but liked me a lot and gave me his sketchbooks to take home to read, which was a good sign. In other words, he had these huge sketchbooks with all his drawings, which is very naive of him. And I love the guy, but he used to give these to people, his entire life in books. And I took the books home and eventually gave it back to him after a couple of months. The most amazing things you ever saw as cartoons. And they've been reprinted now in separate books, but they were huge books, all done in rapidograph pen. And everything was fine, except he wasn't sure he wanted to do it and didn't want to do it, or was scared to do it and didn't know, and split. And I said goodbye to Dana. And Dana says, that's how Robert, Dana's his wife, that's how Robert is when he doesn't want to face anything, when he can't say yes or no, he just goes. Fine. There are other things I want to make. Heavy traffic's in my head, okay. So I go back to Krantz and I tell him I couldn't get the rights. I was sent out to get the okay from Robert. In fact, Steve gave me the contract to sign. So I brought the contract back. I told Steve he split. We had a good time. He's not sure he wants to do it. And I went downstairs to the studio. This is a true story now. About 2.5, 3 weeks later, Krantz walks into my studio and sits down in front of my desk and shakes my hand, says, congratulations. He signed it. I say, fine, I'm really happy. Shows me the contract, and I spoke to Robert years later about it. So I come right to the point. I don't think Robert ever signed the contract. I think someone who had power of attorney did. You're not going to sell a movie in animation to any distributor if you don't have the rights. I mean, it's just no one's going to do that. One of the most important thing in any business, in the movie business, is you've got better own the rights you're selling to a distributor. Otherwise, it's lawsuit time off the wall. So all distributors check ownership, and there are huge rights, who owns the rights and who has the rights, and There are huge insurance policies that protect against this sort of thing, or I can go out with you and make Batman tomorrow. So someone had power. I don't think Rob ever signed the contract. Someone had power of attorney over Robert, whether it was Dana, his wife, or his attorney. I'm not sure which. I never got a clear answer from Krantz who signed it. I personally know that Robert never signed it. The budget was under $1 million. You know, that's impossible even in those days. Disney was spending 20, 22 million. I had 800,000. So it doesn't look that cheap, but it didn't allow me to do the kind of things that were very explosive or big, or do anything over. We had to work fast. We had to work underground, you know. But we loved every minute of it, and it was a good thing for animation to have done Fritz the Cat. I did half the film in New York and the other half in California. The first half I used all my Terry Toons animators that I grew up with. Jim Tyre, all the Popeye guys, Johnny Gent, Nick the Fury. So the guys I grew up with were the guys who taught me how to animate because I was the youngest. So when I was in New York, I used all the Terry Toons guys that I had grown up with and worked with. When I picked up and went to California, just a few of the guys were able to come. It's not easy to drop everything in New York and come to California. So Johnny Vita, the background artist, came with me. Ira Turek, the other background artist, the guy that drew all those great Crumb buildings. And I picked up all the Warner Brother animators from the shorts who were out of work. And I was deliriously happy. I was nervous because these guys I idolized, and they were the greatest animators in the world to me. The guys who did MGM shorts and Warner Brothers shorts in the 40s and 30s. They were all out of work. Shorts had died in California. And they poured their heart into it because they too were bored. They were grown men saying, oh, I don't believe we're doing this.
I can't tell if I'm there or not. How do you tell?
Oh, you'll know when you are.
Oh, balls. It doesn't work for me. I'm a failure as a pot smoker.
For my adult animation, which I was thinking about for quite a while, I started to design techniques that I thought would work in animation because I was bored with the old way of going into a recording studio and doing an actor's voice on one mic and another actor. So what I wanted to do was record in the streets. So I'd stop people in the streets, hippies, actual folk singers, drunks, bums, hookers, prostitutes, and I talked to them with a microphone and a tape recorder running on Niagara, or I take them out to my office and give them $5 each, and I let them talk. I would, of course, steer the conversation to what I thought the screenplay should be.
I went to school in Oakland, and I had quite a few white that were school kids with me.
And then I'd edit those tapes, and sir, if you ask me, what did I add to the film? I had natural conversations that I edited or juxtapositioned around to build dialogue that was missing, and that I storyboarded that, and that gave me new sequences.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine. You know something that you don't have to look at the book, right? So say it.
I brought my father and my two uncles up in the synagogue scene to do that conversation. Do you need your glasses? That's my father there.
Can you give me your glasses? Of course I can. Look, I have to.
Let me see.
You
I'll
can
give
see?
you back a little bit.
Whenever I see Fritz the Cat, the middle guy, is my father. To hear his voice coming off the screen makes me cry. And then at the end, my uncle says, very good, and I left that in.
All right, I say, good. Good,
Yeah.
good. Beautiful.
So I was going to play a pig cop, and the guy that played it with me was Phil Suling.
I think this is the place we got the report on with it. There's these kids upstairs doing this shit and smoking and everything, I think.
Tell me what to do. I never went in before. Tell me what to do.
That was just us ad-libbing. Open up the door!
Hippie bastards!
Good, Ralph, do it again.
And I loved the Honeymooners. I loved Art Carney and Jackie Gleason. I remember telling Phil, let's play like Gleason and Carney as cops. Hours of tape we were screaming. Most of it can't be used, but I just had so much fun, we just kept letting it rolling. I did a voice in every traffic, too. I like to do voices.
Oh, yes. I remember when the time when it was all very inspiring and enlightening, all this history and literature and sociology shit.
I hired Skip Henry, who was a talented actor.
I was gonna bug out and be free from all this bullshit.
I hired him because he was perfect Fritz. He came into the room, he couldn't do anything right. You know, he came into a room, and there were black guys auditioning with him, and he was like that ass. He was like that white kid in Harlem, naturally. His natural voice was that. He didn't have to act. He came and said, excuse me, So he's, what do you want here, man? What's going on with this guy? Where you going, cat? And so, so Skip Hennet was hired after many auditions, because I thought that's what Fritz's voice should sound like. Pure college, what's the word they use eventually? Phony,
Hey, shove over, Jack. Let me drive this goddamn thing.
Also, he was universal. In other words, he could have been from any state in the Union. Crumb wanted me to do, but then it'd be a very Brooklyn sort of thing, and I didn't feel the cat was Brooklyn. I felt the cat was NYU, flown in from the Middle West somewhere, and went nuts because he started to smoke pot. So Skip Hennet was perfect for that, for me. And I believed him. Whenever Skip opened up his mouth, I was on the floor. I also then, at the same time, took photographs of actual buildings and things, because what was important to me in those days was believability. See, animation had never done anything like it. And though the characters were still animals, which bothered me a little, because I wanted to go all the way and make like heavy traffic humans, I thought that if I made the streets more real, not fantasy backgrounds, if I absolutely photographed the East Village as it was and traced it by hand and colored it, if we were on, just like what live action people do when they're on location, that would add to the believability of anyone that ever was in the East Village. It would help me get through what I had to get through, which is Duke dying, the pool balls, and all these things that were just never done before. How much penis do you show? I mean, how much sex do you have? I mean, these are questions that have been answered over and over again easily by this time, but in those days, which point is too much? Which point is not enough? Which point am I selling out? Which points have I not gone far enough? Every one of those decisions, which now seem minor, The Simpsons probably have done as much on television as I did in Fritz the Cat. So at every one of those decisions then were major. I remember a huge discussion I had with a bunch of animators where Fritz goes off the bridge and Duke the bird, Duke, in Crumb's book, flies around and picks him out of the car and flies away, but he's a crow. And I said, I can't do that, because it's not real. I said, if the guy could turn into a crow and fly and pick Fritz out of a falling car, then everything I've been working for is dead. If my animals could act like old animated characters again, then I can't kill Duke later. If he could fly, then it's all wrong. So what I did was not have him fly, have Duke grab a rail and grab Fritz. Not a great idea, but at least he didn't fly.
You saved my life, man.
Shit.
Those are millions of decisions that I had to make on which line do I pull back? Do I gotta clothe all the people? So you can understand that it was pretty, for me, exciting to be making those decisions. And that's really what makes Fritz the Cat work for me, that unseen to most people. They enjoy the film, they don't enjoy the film. Because coming from animation, which was my business, and the history of Walt Disney, which was this huge monolith over all us animators, those were very difficult decisions to make, to keep the film coherent. I'm not talking about story flubs or discontinuity and a bad cut. I'm talking about, if you're going to believe this character dies, if you're going to believe this character goes to bed with a girl, if you're going to believe this character is smoking pot, if you do this, this, and this, if he's an animal, will you still believe this, this, and that? I did a huge juggling act, which is what worked in Fritz the Cat and worked even better in Heavy Traffic. What I learned from Fritz, I brought to Traffic, and those characters, I nailed what I didn't get on Fritz as far as believability and outrage in cartoon character animation. So that's really what, as an older man, if I had to say what was important to Fritz the Cat, was making those decisions that people believed what they saw on the screen was really happening. So when Duke died, they felt it. Or was Fritz really fucked up, they laughed.
Sheesh, what a mob in the park today. God, the place is crawling with phonies.
Being a cartoonist, it's our job to observe what's going on and make decisions. I wasn't part of any movements, because the minute you get part of a movement, you get caught up in their rhetoric, and you become, for the sake, you become them. That's not good for art, that's not good for cartooning. I love the 50s and the 60s. There were great times for authentic art, and there were great times for a lot of phonies, which was great if you're a cartoonist. I mean, if you're a cartoonist, this is gold. These college girls, these girls coming from Long Island, rich families, hanging around the East Village on the sidewalks, making themselves dirty, then going home to a very nice college dorm after the night's over. It's hysterical. As a young man, I knew it. As an older guy, I probably wouldn't have understood it.
Oh, man, look, come on, man. Oh, man, you'll get killed up here.
We met Duke playing pool. He was a pool shooter. Now, I played pool in Brooklyn. And, and you play 8-ball, you lose. 8-ball's a game where the last guy to shoot the 8-ball, then the guy who doesn't loses. So Duke being a pool player and Duke getting shot, and then I realized that Cat had 9 lives. Using that metaphor, I thought that the pool balls bouncing would be a great metaphor for a guy who was a pool player dying, boom, boom. I also used a heartbeat, so every pool ball represented the last beat of the heart. But then I also had riot noise in the background, which added the spook, and I put it on echo. But I worked very hard to find a metaphor, not to just stay on Duke bleeding and dying. So the pool thing hit me. It's just one of those lucky breaks. At another week, I might not have thought about it, but then the whole thing just came together. He's a pool hustler, used the balls. In Heavy Traffic, I used a lot of metaphors also in Coonskin. So in those days, I loved to use those symbolic things both ways. The Bo Diddley thing, coming into the ghetto, was a big favorite of everyone's plus mine, where you start the ghetto off as a little, and that's what ghettos are. Ghettos are lost communities in the middle of a larger city. So you start a ghetto like this and you pull it up, oh, it's where people live. But normally ghettos were lost, little squares in New York City.
Listen to me, will you? I've got a car and some money. I can get all the things we need and we can leave right away. We can go out to the coast.
All of us wanted to go on the road because of Kerouac. But there was Fritz rhapsodizing.
Hey, let's dig one of those little greasy truck stops. I'd like to talk with those truck drivers, hear what they got to say about life on the road.
Then she made him stop at Howard Johnson. I mean, it's perfect. He deserved it. He deserved it. And that's what I wanted the picture to be heading into. I was pushing that's why I killed the chickens. I started it, and that was the thing I wrote that wasn't in the book. I started killing those chickens because I was starting to say, hey, wait a minute. There's something going on wrong here. People aren't acting right. When you join groups, when you join parties that are wrong, when you join movements, it always ends up being corrupted. That's why I did Lord of the Rings. Power tends to corrupt. That was made towards the end of the film. That was animated in California. The process was an ongoing one, artistically. The first week, days or months, when I exposed the breast, ooh, I can't go further than this, And then every time I did something, I had done it, and I learned something from it. So by the time I got to that point in the film, I didn't want to repeat where I had been.
Hey, guys, that's uncool. Don't do that.
Listen, you son of a bitch. You lousy son of a bitch.
Then my style eventually became very funny and then very heavy. So in the beginning of the picture was lighthearted. It started in a bathtub, and Fritz was playing guitar, being a folk singer in the park. But where the whole thing was going in my mind was when Fritz blew himself up in the explosion, and when they started raping and beating the shit out of the girl, or beating the girl up, which is how the whole 60s collapsed. And that's why it wasn't that difficult for me to make that statement then, because it was towards the end of my film. And I was going to blow Fritz to smithereens.
Far out.
I was going to leave him dead in the film and then opted against it. The last scene in the picture with him bouncing in the bed, you get over here, you get over here, was me saying, all right, go out happy. But I was going to kill Fritz in that film. He was going to blow up, and that was going to be it. That was going to be the end. But then after a lot of discussion with the producer and studios and everything, and I didn't mind ending with, because he was right back where he started, but I was going to kill him. Crumb killed him later for me, but for different reasons. People were calling me a pornographer before they saw the film. You have to understand, there wasn't, the few comics that were floating around the underground were very hip people, or comic kids were accepted, but they were 3,000 here, 1,000 here. It wasn't a national thing. When they heard what I was doing, would go to bed, and animals that were screwing, and black crows, you know, and all this, and pot smoking. I can't believe they're gonna do pot smoking. Also because of Mr. Disney, you know, and he was so pure for children. I'm not putting that down, I'm saying he was such an overwhelming force in America. Anyone that went against what he had ingrained that animation should be in our psychology and mind was automatically X-rated. You still in those days could advertise an X-rated film in your newspapers. Today you can't. Whereas papers won't take X-rated movies as ads. In those days you still could, because that's exactly what the rating was for. The rating was for protection. There's your rating X, there's R, here's PG. People make choices when they're adults. So it wasn't as bad, but it was still bad. I mean, the screaming and the yelling over Fritz shows you how straight things were. You look at the picture now, I mean, it's funny, but it ain't triple X rated. But it's the first time anyone cursed in a cartoon. It was the first time anyone did anything in a cartoon of that nature. And I guess you had to be there. It was explosive in its day than it is now. I don't think it's... You can enjoy it now. But I've been in theaters when they first was released, when they had the bathtub scene, or the cops yelling, "You dumb hippie bastard," where I thought the theater would fall apart. I thought the kids would tear the place apart. Just hearing those words coming out of a cartoon character's mouth. The balconies used to shake in the theaters, and they were full. When he said, "You hippie bastard, I'm going to shoot the toilet." I mean, the laughing was so loud, and the stomping of the feet on the floor, the balconies would shake. Because it was a first, and before that it was only, you know, When You Wish Upon a Star. So there was a great contrast there, you know. So maybe in its day it certainly was probably much stronger than it seems now. But anything goes now. The notoriety came from the fact just that we were doing it in every magazine, every underground magazine, every above, every middle ground, with discussing it. Because no one knew what I was doing, neither did I, and Crash could care less. And so it was easy notoriety. It's one of those things. Now, if we had a very small distributor, Jerry Gross, Cinemations. If it was a major distributor like Warner Brothers or Paramount, it probably would have been the first big blockbuster of all time. We have very obscure theaters in obscure towns. It wasn't released. That's why it's so amazing to have the picture so successful. It wasn't released in a major release. It was four walls. It was in some dinky town, in drive-ins, you know. So it wasn't where it was easily gotten to, which I think might have made it more attractive too. I don't know. But kids are kids. You know, if you tell them not to see it, they're going to see it. What Lenny Bruce could not do, because he was killed, Fritz the Cat went the other way. People jumped on the bandwagon. So what Lenny Bruce really started, Fritz the Cat made very commercially acceptable.
Will you look at that?
I go back to California with the picture. I'm very happy with it. It was a very low budget film, but it had done what I wanted to do, which is break the back of animation. I knew what I had. In other words, I knew that it was special for animation. How special it was for theatrical movies, I wasn't sure about, or how big an audience it was, I wasn't sure about, because Crumb wasn't a household name in those days. Just a bunch of cartoonists that knew each other. So took it back and showed the underground guys and Crumb, the movie in San Francisco, Berkeley, somewhere. I flew out to see him, say it's finished. We liked each other very much. We still do. I don't care what he says. He's a great artist, and I knew him before he was a great artist. He saw the film. The guys loved it. He was unhappy with it. He was unhappy. He left the screening room saying, "I don't like the voice." I said, "What kind of voice should I have used?" He said, "You should have used your own voice, Ralph," which I thought was funny for Fritz. But, you know, I said, "Well, Robert, you weren't there. This is the best I could do." But, you know, the film was a labor of love on my part. And I loved making it, and I loved Fritz the Cat, and et cetera, et cetera. He wasn't happy with it. Meanwhile, Rolling Stones had screened it a few weeks before and put out a rave review on it. I got 2 reviews on Rolling Stone. The first review was a rave review, saying the greatest animated movie ever made. And the second review, when Rolling Stone found out that Robert didn't like it, But they brought someone else and they gave me a scathing review. So I'm the only guy in the history of animation that got 2 reviews in one paper. One raving, one scathing. So I knew, like, oh my God. But I really didn't care. I mean, I cared and I didn't care. I knew I'd done the best job possible. And had someone else done this for Krantz, it would have been a horrific film like The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat was that I didn't do. There was no reason for me to do it. I had heavy traffic in mind and coonskin. So I went on to do my own films. So as I remember Fritz, I liked it very much. I thought the color was revolutionary. I thought the on location was, I thought a lot of the breakthroughs helped me do other kinds of things later. And I loved the film for that. The fact I was able to say, fuck you, in animation for the first time and mean it. So what I'm saying is I think it's a great film for that reason. If you're an animator, which I am, and you're in the animation business of 50 years of kids' films, it's got to stand out as a great movie.
Oh, how I wish that here were there with you. All the days of sadness, they seem so needless now.